Yeah, I think we are going to begin. Okay, everybody fine? Yael, Mark, you are okay?
Yeah.
Good, good, fine. So, hello everybody. So nice to see you again. We have here already a lot of friendly faces, but I'm sure we have some people joining us today for the first time. So let me, mainly for the newcomers, say that on behalf of Mashav, the Israeli Agency for International Cooperation, Israel's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, and MATC, Mashav Center for Agricultural Training, we are very honored and we are very happy to welcome you and thank you very, very much for joining us today for this second session of our series of online lectures on challenges and tools for Israel's agricultural sector in response to climate change. We have today two very interesting lecturers. We have with us Dr. Yael Kahel and Mr. Mark Perel, and in a minute we will present them, introduce them. But before we begin, I want to say hello also to my colleague Galit from the Ministry of Agriculture. She's
Hi
sitting.
everyone, welcome.
Galit is sitting within the ministry in Beit Dagan, and we are in Kibbutz Shfaim, a bit in the north. So before we begin, please, everybody should know we are recording the meeting, so don't worry. The video will be in the YouTube page, and our YouTube page. We will put in the chat the link. The first meeting is already there. So those who missed it, you can join and see it these days, okay? For questions, please feel free to write them down in the chat. What we would like to ask is to be concise, write a short question so we can do it a bit more dynamic, okay? So, saying this, Galit, please, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Evelyn. And again, welcome everyone to the second session out of 3 sessions. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Yael Kahal. Yael is an expert in agricultural economics. She is the head of research economy strategy division within Israel's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. Yael is involved in Israel's agricultural policy, dealing with national food security, mitigation of climate change impacts, competitiveness and development of agricultural markets. The lecture today will focus on how to transform agriculture in the era of climate change. Yael, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Galit, and I'm happy to be here. I'm even further in the north from Shvaim. You see here the view from the Carmel Mountains to the sea and the banana plantations below. So I'm happy to talk about the role of government in the area of climate change. And my lecture is divided into 3 parts. I want to give a short introduction, a global view, and later on I will present the specific challenges for Israeli agriculture and Israeli food systems. And the last part, I will introduce our work on a national strategy for food security in the light of climate change. So let's start with the first part. You see here this diagram. I want to show or talk about a little bit about the interactions between climate, agriculture, and food. So we have all kinds of interactions. On one hand, agriculture is exposed to climate change effects, and which is already influencing the agricultural production. On the other hand, we have the influence of agriculture on climate change. Agriculture is a source of greenhouse gas emissions, and but on the third point is that actually agriculture also can be a solution. So there are opportunities to reduce emissions in agriculture and even to sequester carbon in the agricultural soil. So this is with regard to agriculture. If we are taking into account also the food sector, so of course there are additional interactions. Agriculture is important for the food security of the population. And on the other hand, if we are looking at food consumption patterns and consumer behavior, so they are influencing the demand for agricultural products, and they also can influence climate change. So we will talk about it in a moment. So this is to say that if we are looking on the role of government and what we have to do in the area of climate change, we can't just look in the agricultural sector. We have to take a food systems approach and to look on the interactions between different parts of the food system. So to find solutions which take into account the interdependencies and making sure that while we are solving one problem, we are not creating another problem. So I think a similar graph already Gidon showed you in the last week. So this is just to show that the food system, agricultural production in the food system has an important impact on greenhouse, or important part in greenhouse gas emissions, and is influencing climate change. There are different estimates, but you see here, this is the estimates are talking about a quarter of greenhouse gas emissions are resulting from agricultural production and food production, and also, of course, transportation from the food system altogether. And it is important to note that if we are looking on the on the part of different products, that about half of these emissions are caused by animal production, while on the other hand, the animal products in the consumption, they have a much smaller part. And on the other hand, of course, we have the influence of climate change on food production. There's a decline in agricultural area. There are estimates by the IPCC, the international body, for providing our publishing the reports about the impacts of climate change and what we can do. So there are estimates that because of climate change, 10% of the currently suitable area for agriculture won't be suitable anymore in the mid-century, and this can increase under a scenario where we don't do enough to become carbon neutral. It can be increased to a third of agricultural area. In addition, of course, we have the influence on crop yields. There are different estimates. It's different influence on different crops, and also, of course, the impact is different in different areas of the world, but altogether, research shows that we should expect a negative impact, and the result, of course, probably will be an increase in food prices and even food shortages. So just one example, we are seeing here an estimate of NASA research by NASA on corn yields in the world. They are expected to decrease by 24% until 2071. And we have, of course, to take into account that corn is one of the basic grain products and very important for the nutrition in many areas in the world. And actually, if we are looking on the main grains, corn, rice, soy, wheat, which are used also for food and also for feed, and corn also for producing biofuel. And where they are grown in the world, we can see that there's a concentration in relatively few growing areas, and they are supplying most of these products. So crop failures in one or more of these growing areas, they can have a very important impact on food supply and food markets in the future. Yeah, I just want to add that these four crops I show here, they are supplying about 50% of the calories the world population is consuming. So it's very important. And I think Mark will talk about it more in the next lecture, but I just want to say that recent research shows that the probability that there will be crop failure in more than one important production area is increasing with climate change. And research is talking about that we will see unexpected climate conditions which may cause crop failures which we didn't know in the history. So researchers which are looking at past data probably they underestimate the effect of climate change. So all this together, I didn't talk about the growth of world population, and also in Israel population is growing. It really creates a triple challenge for food systems. You see here the graph from the OECD. So on one hand, we have to provide food to the population, the growing population. This has to be done by providing a livelihood for the people working in the food system, farmers and workers. And all this has to be done by decreasing the impact of agriculture on climate and natural resources. So it's a really big challenge. And if we are looking on Israel, so maybe our challenge is even bigger. Just, I think part of you have been in Israel, so you know the country. We are semi-arid country, part of the country, the south of the country, which you are seeing here in the small diagram. It's desert, and also other areas in the south, especially. There's very little rainfall. We are growing a lot of fruit and vegetables and relatively little field crops, and about 60% or 50% fruit and vegetables, and we are providing most of our animal products, but to do this we need to import grains for feed. So there are really a lot of challenges. Part are caused by these global challenges I talked about before. Like climate change, there are specific challenges connected to our characteristics of the Israeli agriculture, the Israeli food system. Farmers and farm workers, we experienced now a real problem with the wars, that many farm workers from foreign countries, they left the countries. We are very happy that a large part came back. Farmers, they are getting older, and the young, their kids not always want to join farming. There's a problem with water prices, the water quantity. We luckily we are very good in using recycled wastewater in agriculture, and there's also supply of desalinated water. But there's a big problem of land availability, because just part of the land is suitable for agriculture. And I will show you in the next graph, but the population in Israel is increasing very rapidly. So we have to build new infrastructure, housing, and it's mainly built on land, agricultural land. So this is a very big problem for our agricultural sector. All these 4 points I talked about, they are influencing the supply of agricultural products from local production. And on the other hand, we have the demand side, population growth and consumption patterns. We are seeing that people increased, for example, meat consumption, which is dependent on import, and it's also not a very efficient use of natural resources. There's a problem of consumer prices since we had in 2011 a crisis of or protests because of high cost of living. So the prices are very much in the focus of policy, and we are talking about the need to decrease them. And if we are looking on trade, so on one hand, trade supplies us with agricultural products we can't grow here. But on the other hand, there's a risk that import of products from countries with very low production costs may harm domestic production and create dependencies on countries with a high risk exposure to future climate change. And that is a situation we don't want to be there. We think we have to continue to grow here fresh products where we have a relative advantage. And because of the knowledge we have here and the characteristics of Israeli agriculture, innovation, and the abilities to cope with climate change. So for us, it is very important to keep producing here key products for our domestic market. Here you can see the population growth in Israel. We are now nearly 10 million people. When I immigrated to Israel about nearly 30 years ago, we were about half of it. And you can see here that in 2065, according to the population forecast, we will double ourselves. There should be 20 million people in Israel, and we are already now a very country with a high population density. So that we have to take into account. It's a challenge to provide food and expand agricultural production for the growing population. Here you can see that we really, in fruit and vegetables, we are supplying most of them by domestic production, and also milk, meat, and eggs. But like I said before, on this milk, meat, and egg, the livestock products, we are dependent on imports of feed. And there be a large range of products where we are really dependent on imports, like grains. Just about less than 10% is from local production, also fish, oils, and legumes. So we talked about climate change, and if we are looking on world exports, so what we can see that for many products which are important for our nutrition and which we are importing, you see them here. These are 10 central products for Israeli consumption. There are just a few countries which are responsible for most of world exports. That's what you see, for example, for almonds, 3 countries. They are responsible for more than 80% of world exports. And you see additional examples. And this really increases the risk of supply chain disruptions. I just want to give an example. In the last 2 years, Spain, they really suffered there from drought, consecutive drought, 2 years, one after the other, as a result of climate change. And Spain is the producing about 50% of world world olive oil, and is also the main supplier of world olive oil to the world market. And we are importing. We are growing olive oil. We are growing olives for olive oil by ourselves, but we are also importing. And this drought caused production to drop by more than 50%, 2 years, one after the other, and with a big effect on prices and shortages in imports. So this is just one example, and probably, according to research and according to the experience of recent years, these events like this, they will become much more common. And what we observe in addition, that a lot of countries, when they are faced with low yields and in local production, so they are thinking first about their domestic population and restricting exports. So what we can see here, that there were export restrictions by countries in 3 crises in the last decade. One is the food price crisis in 2008, one COVID, and the last, the Ukraine war. So in each of these crises, there were a number of countries, more than 20, nearly 30 in the food price crisis, which restricted the exports and exacerbated, caused an even greater shortage of food on the international market. So you can see this, that the risks to food security are increasing, and Gidon talked a week ago about climate change and the need to for mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damages, like insurance, which you will hear in the next week, to compensate growers for losses. But this is essential, but it is not enough. We think that because of the wars, crisis, and also the Israeli geopolitical situation, we have to establish a strategy to ensure food security for our population in the decades to come. And with food securities, I mean the focus on how to ensure that there will be enough food for everyone. So that's what I want to talk about in the last part of my presentation, about our work on establishing a national strategy for food security. So probably you all know what is food security. Maybe not. I just there's an international definition which talks about food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. That is an international definition by the United Nations, and it includes 4 dimensions. There has to be physical availability of food. There has to be enough food for everyone. People have to have access to food, so they have to be able to buy food, and physically it has to be shops which offer nutritious food, and they also have to have the economic means to buy this food. And of course, it's also important that they know how to utilize it for nutritious diet, and all these dimensions, they have to be stable all the time. They have to be fulfilled simultaneously. So this is food security, and our vision is to ensure a regular long-term supply of healthy food while promoting efficiency and sustainable development. This is, of course, based on the definition I showed you before, and about coping with the triple challenge. So one very important part in this strategy is we don't talk about producing everything in Israel. That is impossible, but we want to think and establish a smart combination between local production and import based on a risk assessment. But that's what we are working about. And based on this analysis, we will establish targets for domestic production, quantitative targets, where we want to be in another 10 or 20 years to ensure supply to the domestic population. And of course, for this, it's very important to promote innovation, because we don't have enough we don't have enough land. We have to be more efficient, to try to produce more with less. And the last point, we have to, of course, we need production factors. So we have to think how we can keep enough agricultural land, and that we really can produce the food we need, and at the same time also promoting environmentally friendly agriculture to decrease the harm done by agricultural production to the environment. So how we do it? I'm coming back to the food systems approach. We have to take into account trade-offs and linkages. I just want to give an example for if we are looking on land availability. So for agriculture, we need land. We have to have land. We want to decrease carbon greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the directions is to have solar energy on agricultural land. So we have to take, we have competing uses, we have to take it into account and see how we can deal with these linkages. The main elements of our food security plan, what you see, domestic production, imports and stocks, these are the sources for food supply. So we will look on these three elements. And here's a list of questions we are dealing with. So what is the basis? Of course, it's to decide what we have to put, what consumption we have to provide. So what is the responsibility of the government to the population to ensure food supply? So we think we have to base it on the nutritional recommendations of the health ministry. And then the second very important question is, of course, how much local production is needed. So what we have to produce here, where we have to continue to import, what products, when we are looking on imports, so how we can reduce the risks from imports. There are products we are importing mainly from one country. So maybe we have to diversify imports and import for more than one countries. We are talking about stocks. So how much stocks we have to keep for emergency situations, and what quantities and products. And of course, the last question, how to increase production sustainable. That are not all the questions, but that these are main questions we are dealing with in the framework of this plan. So our methodology is to look, we looked on strategies of other countries, and well, maybe we were a bit surprised. There are quite a lot of countries who are dealing with similar questions. They think that it is important to have a plan for strategy for ensuring food security on a national level. And we learned a lot from analyzing these strategies. We did a risk assessment for domestic production, and Mark will introduce it in a moment and show you the results. And we have to look, of course, on the risks of imports. So the risk assessment of domestic production included also a part which dealt with imports, and we will continue to investigate it. And we also already did a calculation for the necessary supply of food products based on nutrition recommendations by the health ministry. So that's work we already did. We are now in the process of establishing working groups dealing with the different aspects of the plan. So like local agricultural imports, we want to involve the food industry also, consumption targets and patterns and how we can change them, nutritional security, supply and emergency situations, and of course the role of research and development and innovation. And this will be our outputs, so goals and objectives, especially for domestic agriculture, but of course we have to look also on other aspects, imports and so on, mapping the gaps where we are now, where we want to go. We will compare alternative pathways to reach our goals and analyzing the costs and benefits. And in the end, we want to have, hopefully at the end of the year, we want to have an action plan which shows us what to do. So I think, Evelyn, I don't have a lot of time anymore, no? So I will do the...
You have for sure 5, 6, 7 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have to run. Thank you.
No.
So just to show you, there are key background documents in this process we already prepared. One is the work we did together with the Ministry of Environment. They actually initiated this work and are responsible for it, but the part on agriculture in this document, which is called it was an intergovernmental committee working on the preparation of food systems for climate change. So what has to be done in the agricultural sector, it was prepared by the Ministry of Agriculture, and Gidon in the last week introduced some of the recommendations from this plan. The second background document Mark will introduce in the moment, that is the assessing climate change risks, impacts to Israeli agriculture. And third document, it's our international review of government actions and programs for national food security, where we looked at in the first stage on 35 different countries on the actions they are taking to ensure national food security. And then we did a drill down to 10 countries which have a detailed strategy, dedicated government bodies dealing with food security, and we learned from them how they established their targets for domestic food production, for example, and what are the instruments they are using for ensuring food security at the national level. I just want to show you shortly in the few last minutes the work of the Ministry of Health, which and we helped them, but about the calculation of nutritional requirements for Israel. This is actually what we did to have a compass where we want to go. We looked at the national national guidelines for nutrition. In Israel, we have national guidelines established by the health ministry. They are recommending a Mediterranean diet based on a lot of fruit and vegetables, olive oils, whole grains, relatively little animal products, fish, nuts. And what you see here, that they took these recommendations and translated them into quantities for daily consumption. This is in grams per day for different population groups. And then here you see the population forecasts for these different population groups, age groups actually, and we have a special group for pregnant women with additional nutritional requirements. So you see here the increase in Israeli population, and each with their nutritional needs. And then based on these two data sets, the health ministry with our help calculated actually the quantities which we should supply if everyone ate according to the nutritional requirements. So of course, what we did, we compared where we are now and what are the recommendations, and we are not there yet. I hope we will we move in this direction. Actually, we are eating too much beef, chicken, and also cereals, and too little fruits and vegetables, legumes and nuts. So what is clear that when we are talking about our plan for food securities, you also see here the food systems approach. We can't just look on the agricultural sector. We also have to look on the consumption side and to see how we can there move into the direction of recommended nutrition, which it's recommended first based on a health perspective. But if we analyze it, we can see that these recommendations, they are also much better for the environment. They are decreasing the environmental impact of food production, and they are also decreasing the need for food because we are eating less animal products, which are less efficient in supplying nutrition. So we have a win-win-win. It's more healthy, less environmental impact, and also more easy to provide food security. So that's our plan. And in a timeline, we are quite in the beginning, but we want to be very quick and have a plan at the end of the year. We are doing it together with other ministries and also involving stakeholders like food industry, like farmers, of course, which are the basis for food production, and civil organizations. And research. We think we need an expert teams which will help us to establish the targets for consumption and production, and also an expert team which help us afterwards to quantify the benefits and costs of different pathways for reaching our goals. And yeah, that's it. So just to sum up, we think that really because of the changes and the risks I talked about before, we can't just continue to assume that we can rely on imports. We have to think where we can rely on the imports, how much how much stock holding we have to do, where we have to strengthen our domestic production and increase it, in looking at all the food system in a holistic way. And this includes points which I didn't talk about. For example, I didn't talk about food loss and waste, but also this, of course, is essential if we are is essential part to increase our food security, that is to decrease the food which is not used, which is produced but not used because of thrown away at the household level or lost at the marketing stages. So yeah, I think it's a very important subject, and maybe I hope we will be able to achieve it till the end of the year. And that's it. So thank you very much. And yeah, I will back to Evelyn or Galit.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Evelyn, we will
And
go
if there
to
are
questions.
questions, of course, I will be happy to answer.
Yes, thank you very much, Yael. Very much. Yes, I think we have an interesting question from Eric. Eric is asking Dr. Kagel, how do actually the different departments and institutes link each and between them in order to find technically and strategic economic solutions? So practically,
that's really a challenge. So we are one government, but there are different ministries with different interests, and also not everyone is has the same assessment of the risks for food systems. So I think one thing we have to do, this is really to establish the data, to show the risks, so that to have the facts right, and this will help us to integrate the different interests and moving, hopefully moving in the same direction. But it's really a challenge. So we already in the beginning, when we in the first meetings we had with other ministries, so we saw that there are differences in opinion. For example, what I mentioned as one of the challenges of Israeli food sector, that the subject of prices. So when we talked about that we have to continue to produce here and increase domestic consumption, so there were other ministries saying, but maybe this will be more expensive than just to import the product. So we are talking about, we are trying to convince them that we have to take a long-term perspective and to analyze the risks. So if we today can import cheaply from another country, but we know that this will be a country that in the future will be impacted very much by climate change, so we don't want to become dependent on supply from this country. So this is our yeah our one challenge in establishing this plan. I hope I answered your question.
I have to tell you that Eric is writing, what is your wait a minute, somebody, what is the secret you are so successful in finding solutions? I don't know if we are successful in finding solutions. We are successful in finding, first of all, the challenges and then discussing the solutions. But Yael, what's your idea?
Yeah, I don't know. Ask me at the end of the year. I can tell you. I think in the end, maybe one thing helping us that that we are a small country, and often it's finding solutions together. It's also that you know the people, you talk with them, you know them personally. And then it's maybe easier to find a consensus. And yeah, one of the secrets, I think, when the work, for example, which Mark will introduce in a moment, this I see as really important to find the solutions. That is, first to establish what are the risks and how they will, also trying to quantify them, how they will influence domestic production, and then we have the basis to analyze how we can solve it, but to find where we can put priorities. See, for example, this just as an example, a hypothetical example, potatoes will be influenced very much by climate change. So let's find a solution for potatoes, what we can do, research, move it to another area, more irrigation. So that is very important, to have a quantitative and scientific analysis of the risks and the impacts of climate change for food production, and also for imports, of course. No? So that's a big challenge. Of course, everything we don't really know. But we know that we don't know what will be in the future, but I think we know that the risks are increasing, and we have to take this into account and to be prepared, and hoping that it will be not as worse as we maybe see it in our forecasts.
Thank you very much, Yael. I think it's a good time to move to our next lecture. Evelyn, will you introduce Mark?
Yeah, for sure. So thank you, Yael, from my side, and yeah.
Thank you very much.
For the second presentation of today, I am very honored to introduce our agrometeorologist, Mark Perel. Mark is the head of the Meteorological Department of Israel's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development since 2004, and he's also the co-coordinator of the Agricultural Preparation Committee on Climate Change, Soil Conservation, and Drainage Unit. Mark is in charge of the Agricultural Automatic Weather Station Network, which supplies critical information and data to all our farmers. And he also leads a team of experts within the ministry whose task is to formulate guidelines for the adaptation of the national agricultural sector in light of the climate change future impacts on crops and agricultural practices. Thank you very much, Mark, for being with us and for sharing your experience on risk assessment for Israel agriculture and adaptation to climate. Mark?
Yeah. Hi, Evelyn. Hi. Can you see the presentation? Everything's okay?
Yeah, we see it.
I'd like to say hello to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're from. And just a short presentation on climate risk assessment. Thank you, Yael, because I'll continue a lot of what Yael just said and presented, because the importance of climate risk assessment is actually quantifying climate change. What are the exact effects on yields, on the economy, on food security, and these are the things that we need as professionals to give the numbers, specific numbers, to the stakeholders, to the head of the country or the head of the office for policy making. We've got to give them the exact numbers, trends, and basically what's happened up to today, and where we think we're going in the future, in order to, like I said, get ready for the future and get our policies right. Hopefully we'll get it right. We don't always get it right, but we're trying. So let's start. And what I want to show you is not only future trends, but in any risk assessment or climate risk assessment survey, you got to see what's happened in the past, well, last 30, 40, 50 years, because it's important to know, and everybody should know, I'm sure everybody does know, that climate change is already here. Now, I just want to show you a little bit of data from a few slides from our last winter. These are the last Novembers, and just look at the last 10 years. And this is from 1950 to 2022. And you can see in the 80s, the Novembers were pretty cool, and our Novembers are warming up dramatically. If we look at December, the average temperature in December, again, from 2000, 2010, 20, a significant rise in temperatures. And these are measured temperatures, not forecasts. Sorry about a little bit of Hebrew, but this is January, and just showing you 1 to 2, 2.5 degrees above average temperatures, minimum and maximum temperatures are last January that we've just had. This is precipitation and rain in one of our stations. The red line is showing you above 300 millimeters rain. So it's warming up, but again, the precipitation doesn't always work parallel to the temperatures. So we might be warming up, but we're also getting extreme rain events. And this is 300 millimeters, 350 millimeters in a station that annually has about 500 millimeters. So about 70% of the annual rain in 1 month. So we talk about rain intensity, the strength of the rain, flooding, soil degradation. We're seeing that, and I'll show you in the further slides. February, we had a lot of rain across the coast. What you're seeing here is the amount above the average, the monthly anomaly, and the rain. But what I'm trying to show you is that we had a lot of rain in the northern areas of the country, but most of Israel's agriculture is in the south. Because what Yael was telling you before is about land use. Most of the population live in Tel Aviv suburbs, Jerusalem. The Negev is a semi-arid area where most of our field crops are grown. And we've had a severe drought for the last few years, specifically this year. Okay, so the annual precipitation in the north can rise above 1,000 millimeters. You might think Israel is a dry country, but only in the south. I don't know if you've been here to Eilat, to Beersheba, 100 millimeters and less annually. Now, when we look at the annual precipitation, if we compare 1960 to 1990 to 1980 and to 2010, we can see a drop. Okay, the brown and red colors are a drop in the annual precipitation amounts. And there are certain areas along the coast where there's been a rise in the amount of precipitation. The problem is that the Lake of Galilee is in the north, and that is our main reservoir. So a lot of our water comes or used to come from the north. We're drying up in the north, and we have to then desalinate more water. If we look at the rain across the country, this is data we received from the Israeli Met Office, collaboration that we did with them. And we specifically asked them for the annual precipitation trends. And you can see if the triangles are facing downwards, it's a negative trend. Most of the country, not all, we are seeing a negative trend. The bigger the triangle, the less or the more, depends, more negative becomes, less rain annually. And up north, it's negative trend. So less and less precipitation. Up north, again, our main water reservoir is the Lake of Tiberias, and that is a big problem. We also look at rain intensity, floods, torrential rain causing soil degradation, more hail events, and a rise in wind associated damages. The problem with hail is that we don't measure hail, but we are seeing more and more hail events causing damage on agricultural crops and more wind associated damages. Now, when we look in further on the rain, we can see that there's a decrease in the amount of rainy days. It doesn't matter the threshold. If we look at 1 millimeter per day, 5 millimeters per day, 10 millimeters per day, less and less rain days. And what we have between these rainy events is dry wind that causes high evaporation and a need for more irrigation, even in our winter. And you saw our winter we can have 800 to 1,000 millimeters, but if we have long spells of drought during the winter, we have to irrigate. CDD is consecutive dry days. So the other side of the mirror is if you have less rain days, then of course you have more dry days. And you can see a rise of the amount of dry days. So we're getting basically a little bit less rain in a lot less rainy days. Okay? And that's a clue maybe of a rise in the rain intensity. And if we look at the 95th percentile of rain, meaning the 5% of the most extreme weather or the extreme rainy days a year, okay, these 5% are contributing more and more to the annual rain amount, meaning we're getting stronger rain events, the rain is becoming more intense and causing flooding and damaging crops and soil. But that's not enough. We wanted to quantify the actual amounts, the extreme amounts that we get in 1 day of rain, 3 days of rain, 7 days of rain. I know it's a little bit small, but most of the triangles are facing up, meaning that the quantities we are getting per day, per 3 days, per 7 days storms, more and more, meaning the intensity of rain is increasing. If we look at certain thresholds, we look at 50 millimeters, 70, 80 millimeters in 2 days, 100 millimeters in 3 days, we can see more and more rain events crossing these thresholds. So again, another sign of the rain intensity that is increasing. Hail events. I said it before, we don't measure hail, but we can see we have from our radar, we can see the pictures from the radar. And this was an event on the 25th of October, along with gusts of over 35, 38 meters per second, which is above 100 kilometers per hour. And we were basically seeing golf balls fall from the sky, immense damage to orchards and greenhouses. Now, we don't measure hail, okay? But we can see with the insurance compensation, a dramatic rise. And next week, Dr. Muammar will give you a presentation about the insurance compensation, insurance companies. But we can see the amount of money that the insurance companies have to pay is on a rise. Specifically, hail is 10% of the total damage. So we don't measure directly, but we can see the damage that hail has to the agriculture, crops, orchards, and greenhouses. These are some pictures on the nets above our orchards. Now, when we look at evaporation, the main rise in evaporation is in December, January, February. And this is the Eastern Mediterranean over here, Cyprus, Israel, okay? And the main rise is in the winter because of CDD, consecutive dry days. More dry days, more evaporation. And farmers didn't used to irrigate during our winter. And now everybody irrigates nearly throughout the season. because we always will get dry periods, even during our winter. The forecasts for the future show an additional rise in evaporation if it's through the season in the summer. And what that means is we're getting less rain, more evaporation. So obviously we're going to have to irrigate our crops more, and the price of water is increasing. So it'll cost more money to grow crops in Israel. Now, the IPCC warming trends you all know, but basically some trends are more severe than others. Okay, but the direction is obvious. We're only going one way, and that's warmer. If you look at the Eastern Mediterranean, June to August, it's a hotspot. It's a global hotspot, and the predicted trends are all one way. If it's going to rise by 8 degrees or 4 degrees, I don't know, but we're going to rise. It's going to become warmer, and also in the winter. The sea will rise, and that gives a problem because most of Israel's population are along the coast. So what we did with the Met Office to determine the actual trends of heating through the last 50 or 70 years, we asked them, okay, give us the maximum temperatures in different areas, different climatic zones, because we grow different crops in all the different areas. Now, what you're going to see now is maps showing the rising temperatures per decade. Now, if you've from 1950, we've 7 decades basically have passed. So all the numbers you see here, you can actually times by 7. So if you're looking at 0.17, you've actually more than 1 degree rise in the annual maximum temperature. But if we look at a shorter period, just the last 30 years, and we were actually shocked when we saw the numbers, and again, talking in numbers is very important. We see 2/3 per decade in the last 3 decades rise in max temperatures, meaning 2 degrees in the last 30 years. So when people are saying that the forecasts are for another 2, 3, 4 degrees, we've seen 2 degrees in the last 30 years. So we're pretty sure this is the probability is pretty high that we're going to continue to reach another 2, 3, 4 degrees. And that's going to have a severe effect on agriculture, everybody, but we are the Ministry of Agriculture. I don't know if Gideon spoke to you about the indices, but we have specific indices that were set by the farmers to relate to all the different crops. If it's field crops, avocados, citrus, deciduous crops, and one of them was 34 degrees. How many days above 34 degrees there are in the year? So in the last 7 decades, let's just take the southern area, there's been 5 days extra per year every decade. So that's another 35 days annually. That's more than a month we've earned above 34 degrees. Now, in the last 30 years, another 10 days per decade. So think how warm it's become. And then when we look at, let's go quickly to 38 degrees. In the last 3 decades, along the coastal plains, we've another day, let's say extra day per decade, I mean another 3 days per year above 38 degrees. Now, these severe heat waves cause immense damage on the crops. So we've got to know how to protect, what crops to grow, what varieties to grow, and these things cost money. And also, Yael was talking previously about policymakers making the right decisions. So this is the kind of data we have. Also, we didn't only look at the maximum or minimum temperatures, we call it the poached egg effect, meaning you gradually warm. So how many hours above different thresholds? In this case, how many hours above 32 degrees? You can see the trends, okay, from 250 hours to 400 hours. Think of what this means to the crops, okay? Different areas. And look at the last 30 years. Actually, we were in a bit of a cooling trend in the 70s. And then, wow, look at the last 30 years. And the question is, are we going to continue? Now, the minimum temperature is not much difference. I'll just show you the last 30 years. About half a degree per decade. That means between 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees extra in minimum temperatures. And this has immense effect on different crops, especially deciduous trees who need cold hours. Now, when we look at different thresholds, days below 5 degrees, day below 7 degrees, it doesn't matter. The trends are pretty obvious, becoming extremely warmer. The only thing is, if you look at the extreme minimum, we actually, certain areas is getting colder, meaning the extreme weather will also be on the cold side, but the averages are rising. Okay, so you've got to be careful about frost and other extreme events that can happen on the cold side, even though the trends are warming, and we're going to be affected much more by warming effects and extreme heat waves. So we do have frost. I'm just showing you February last year. You can see down near 0 in certain areas, and this affects subtropical orchards, citrus, flowers. So it does affect. So frost can be quite a problem, even though the warming trends are actually an advantage in that manner. Less frost is an advantage. So basically, the frequency of major frost events is dropping, but are they becoming more severe? So we've got to be careful. So we won't have every 5 years, but every 10, 15 years, we'll have a severe frost event. Okay, so decreasing frost events, but they're going to be quite severe when they do happen. Okay, now we look at cold hours for deciduous trees, and you can see the trend, again, because of the warming of the nights, and basically looking at temperatures or nights that are below 7 degrees. And there's a definite decrease in cold nights. And there's certain areas in the hills, we've lost 30 to 40% of our chilling hours. And you can just see the trends here are pretty obvious. And in the mountains, higher mountains from 2,500 to 1,800, that's chill units. That's about a quarter, 30%. So it's immense. It's immense. And I just want to show you, look at these 2026, just look at the percentage of the cold hours, the chill hours received in the last winter, 2023, 24. I've been 20 years at my job, and I don't remember a winter so warm. 0 chilling hours, basically, and we're going to feel the effect of our deciduous orchards, if it's almonds, nectarines, apples, and etc. So the forecasts are for a further decrease in chill hours and a rise in temperatures, 1-2 degrees till 2050, but even a more extreme heating trend from 2050 till the end of the century. And the minimum temperatures is basically the same. Now, when you look at the average temperatures in Israel, you can see, look at the trends. It's very easy to see. Look at the bunch over here from 2010, the warmest year up to date. Compare it to what was here in the 80s and the 90s. So climate change is here. It's not a prediction, it's a fact. So how do we quantify, how do we deal with what's happening, what's already happened, and what's predicted to happen? The influence on crop yields, that's number one. That's very important. The economic cost. And Yael spoke before about food security, which is immensely important because economists think that they say let the power of the market decide that if you can get cheaper food abroad, then import. But there might be a scenario that you're not going to have anybody to import from, because they will show you later. The countries that we import wheat or corn or soya from, they might have severe weather effects in their own country and they won't have enough to export. So food security is really, it's immensely important. So when you look at food imports, and Yael did show this, our main imports are milk product, olive oil, potatoes, sesame, rice, wheat, and corn. And the countries that you see are basically, if we look at basic food like rice, wheat, and corn, okay, the main calories, the USA, Russia, Ukraine, India, Australia, they're big, and I'd put in China as well. Now the problem is, and Yael was speaking before, she spoke about a bread basket failure, okay, which means that if you're going to have a severe weather impact or event in more than one major country that grows, let's say, wheat, corn, or rice, let's just say America and China at the same time, you're going to have a bread basket failure. They're not going to be able to export food to other countries. And then it's going to be a major problem for countries like Israel, okay, to actually find basic food. And that's what Yael was saying before. We must try and strengthen our local farmers and our local food production. Okay, now the forecast range we're looking at is till 2050, but also above that to 2080 until the end of the century. And the predictions are by two scenarios, which is the RCP 4.5 and 8.5. As it looks today, the more severe prediction of 8.5 is actually what's going to happen. And so basically RCP 8.5 is the Israeli Ministry of Agriculture's, what we say is that's what we're looking at. And that's what we're going for, because we think that's going to be probably the correct trend. What we did was we used a sort of a generic a model for field crops, which is called aqua crop. And what we did was, I don't think I have time to go into exactly what the inputs of the crop are. You know, the variety, the sowing dates, harvest dates, soil, type of water, irrigation, and so forth. But those are the inputs, and of course climatic inputs. All right, and the outputs are the predicted yields. And the problem is that in Israel, the agroclimatic trends are, like I said before, are not looking good. Annual prediction, annual precipitation is going to drop, temperatures are going to rise, evaporation rate is going to increase, soil moisture index is of course on the rise, or actually dropping, because you're going to have more evaporation and less precipitation. So we're in quite a problem over here. And what we did was, we did sort of a reanalysis. What we used the aqua crop, and what we did was we tried to predict yields of former years. So what we did was we tried to predict, once we had the data, and we could see if we managed to predict yields of previous years, and we did quite a good job. What you can see here is the actual prediction of the model and the yields that actually were grown in the field. And that was the way we calibrated our model, because if you don't know how to predict the past, then I think you're going to be quite a problem in predicting the future. And the predictions, at least the trends, were pretty close. Okay, in different areas, we predicted, and then we saw the observed yield, and we were pretty close. At least good years and specifically bad years, we managed to predict pretty well. And of course, like I showed before, we can't get out of it, but there's going to be a rise in irrigation rates. The advantage of Israeli agriculture is that we're used to irrigating. There's very few orchards that aren't irrigated in Israel. So we've got sort of a mini advantage on other countries, specifically Spain and Northern Africa, who compete with us if it's in citrus or avocados or other crops. Now, the predicted drop in potato yields is about 20% in the next 50 years because of temperatures mainly, especially minimum temperatures and high temperatures during the Israeli spring. So you can see the trend. Maybe it's not correct, but I'm sure the direction's correct. So it won't be 20, maybe 15, maybe 25% drop in potato yields. Then we had a wheat model. We tried out this model in different areas. This is up north in the Harod Valley. Again, predicted yields and observed yields. Once we manage to reconstruct the past, we can predict the future. Now, when we look at the future, and this is a prediction of wheat yields in Israel. The blue line is observed wheat yields, and this is the model, the black line, and the dots here are the trend. Now, the trend is a negative trend. There is going to be a drop of about 20% in wheat yields in Israel, but that's, let's say, on average. The problem is there are going to be specific certain years with total drought, close to zero yield. So when you think about a population that's going to double itself and specific years without very much yield, there's quite a lot to think about over here. Again, we've got to give the numbers, and then that's not easy, but doable. It's more difficult then to think of the policies, actually what to do. Carrots, the same thing. Carrots are mainly irrigated, but again, a drop in yields, mainly because of temperature rise. Avocados. Okay, so avocados are again, by 2050, about a 20% drop in yield, about 40% drop by 2080, and this is because of the very severe heat waves that we get, specifically in the spring, mainly during the month of May, the time of flowering or fruiting, and that's when the trees, the avocado trees, are damaged the most. And again, averages don't tell the whole story. In 2020, May 2020, we had a severe heat event, a heat wave over here in Israel, and up to 60% of the avocados were destroyed. So this gives us a picture of what we need to do. Maybe we might have to use nets, increase irrigation, different maybe varieties, but it shows you if we don't do anything, what might happen. Bananas are more resilient, and the reason is they're more resilient naturally to warm temperatures. And also in Israel, we grow bananas in nets. And that probably going to be the answer in Israel, is growing more and more orchards under nets, sort of making a micro climate and then protecting the trees from the severe weather events. So there will be a drop in the banana production, but not as severe as in the avocados. Citrus, also more resilient, and that's going to give us, I think, quite a boost, because citrus in Israel is irrigated. Our competitors from Spain and Northern Africa don't irrigate, and I think they're going to have they're already having immense problems. So I think it's going to give Israel an advantage, because we're going to have tough conditions, but I think our competitors are going to have tougher conditions, and it just might give Israel an edge because we are used to growing in semi-arid conditions, in difficult conditions that are becoming more severe, but the Israeli farmers, they're pretty good in handling the severe conditions. And if we can help them use nets, increase irrigation, drop water prices, maybe we have, I think, a better chance. Apples, again, apples are grown mainly in the mountains, and pretty obvious what's happening. I showed you the maps with the drop in the chilling hours, and the more the chilling hours are dropping dramatically. Deciduous trees like apples are finding it more and more difficult. Extremely warm temperatures, even in the hills, above 40 degrees during the summer. So it's not only affecting the production, but also the quality. And that goes for all the crops, but especially apples. Now, that is the effect on the yields. But once you have an effect, a drop in the production, then naturally you're going to pay the price. It's the predicted economic cost is about 20% increase in the cost, which comes to 1.1 billion new Israeli shekels, which is about divided by, it's about $300 million US dollars. That's just for vegetables. For fruit, another 44% per kilo, which is a net annual loss of 1.5 billion new Israeli shekels. It's a lot of money, okay, and that's the amount that's going to cost the farmers, but the consumers are going to pay much more. And so us as a government, we're going to have to find a way to and just like Yael was saying, it's a big problem, prices. So on one hand, it's becoming more difficult. We're going to have to irrigate more. We're going to have to protect our crops, which costs money. And on the other hand, we're going to have to see that prices are not too high. And so the government then, again, if the prices are too high, then of course, the easy solution is, of course, imports. So the conclusion is, and a few important things, yeah. Climate change is here, and I hope you all know it. And I mean, everybody talks about it, but it's one thing saying it, but when you put words into numbers, I think it has a different effect. And when you see those charts, those red colors, I mean, when I saw it, I was, and I live here, and I'm in this job for 20 years, and I knew there was a warming trend, but the extent of this warming trend was amazing. The last 30 years, wow. And if this trend is going to carry on for the next 30 years, we're going to have serious problems. It's important to determine specific agricultural indices. If you want to do a climatic risk assessment, and these specific indices, you determine them with interacting with the farmers or with the specialist. Ministry of Agriculture, we have a few specialists in every different field, and then, you know, if the different thresholds for avocados or citrus are important, then you've got to know what are the trends for these specific thresholds. Is it 34 degrees, 38 degrees? Is it the amount of precipitation? Is that the intensity? Is it the chilling hours? So in order to do a risk assessment survey, you've got to first determine the specific indices. And indices for agriculture are different than indices for let's just say for the public or for I don't know, for other people in the country. So there are specific indices for agriculture. Now, when we do it, we want when you do carry out an analysis of previous and future climate trends, the quantifying is very important. Quantify the yields, the emphasis on the crops, the economic cost, and of course the analysis of food import policies. And the last thing is, with all this data we have, and and all the numbers I've shown and the charts that I've shown, the end of the day is to reach the policymakers, the stakeholders, and to actually implement a climate change policy. And that's not something that happens in one day. In the Ministry of Agriculture, it's sort of from the bottom up. It's from the specialists, from the group of specialists we've just seen, Yael and Gideon last week, and me, and you'll see Muammar next week. And we, the people that are using or collecting the data and utilizing this data to actually implement or to get to the policy makers and then implement the actual policy. And I think that is the most important thing, because policy makers don't always know the dangers or don't have the correct data. And I think that is our job, to show them the facts, show them the data, show them the trends, so they can take this out and implement the correct policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Evelyn, do we have questions?
Bravo, bravo, Mark. Thank you very much. What a wonderful English.
Oh, my English is...
Where is your English from?
my
It's us
English,
South Africans, Evelyn.
my English. Yeah, many years back.
Good, good.
When I was young.
Mark, look, there is a question which I suppose it will take another 2 hours, but I don't know. Noe is asking, how do you actually use aqua crop to build prospective scenarios to policy making? Can you say some words about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, AgroCrop is not easy to use, and because it's not easy to use, we collaborated with first of all a university, Professor Jerry Knox from England. He's from Cranfield University in England, and they implemented or used the AquaCrop in England. And he was actually working with the Ministry of Agriculture in England. And so we actually not the first, I don't think it's anything new. We just actually wanted to learn from other countries. And with his knowledge of AquaCrop, he actually helped us out to use this model. If there's anybody who wants to know more, get more data, Evelyn, you can give him my number or my email or anything, and they can contact me later.
Great. You can write it down in the chat.
I will write it down in the chat, don't worry.
Galit. Mark, another question. Thank you. Eric is asking, this 1 billion shekels loss, is it now or is it over time in the future? This is a prediction.
No, it's predicted loss. It's mainly based on a predicted drop in let's say 20% average in yield. Of course, a rise in irrigation. Okay, you got to irrigate more, and of course the price of water is going to rise as well, because you have to desalinate more water. So and then also you're probably going to have to spray more, because warmer conditions, you have more disease and more pests, and also imports are going to cost more, and fertilizing compounds are going to cost more. So what we did was we actually worked with an agriculture economist. He's a specialist, and we actually have the Excel sheet. So if anybody wants to see, we did specific calculations for the different crops. But the main thing is, at the end of the day, the drop of the 20% decrease in yield.
Thank you, Mark. And I have actually a very practical question. You were telling us about the what will happen with our potato production, for example. What actually are we doing now? Are we already doing something in order to look for instance, new varieties? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think Volcani and Minister of Agriculture are always trying to find out new varieties, okay, that are more resilient mainly to warmer temperatures, and also looking at different areas, maybe areas in the mountains where it's a little bit cooler. And then you've got maybe looking at changing or shortening the season, because the problem is at the beginning where it's really warm and at the end where it's really warm. So a lot of the field crops, a lot of the vegetables, also if we're looking at also tomatoes as well, cucumbers, things like that are becoming more and more affected by the warm temperatures. So another option is just to use varieties that are shorter in time and just shorten the season. So maybe if you used to start before in September, October, maybe start later in November and end April, not May, June. And also the wheat varieties is the same. Trying to use varieties that are, on one hand, more resilient, on the other hand, need a shortened season.
Great, interesting. Well, I think for all of our participants, I think we have to tell them that we are really always so proud about this actually working together, the policy makers and the policy people and the research and the extension people. I think this is something that we are trying to show always in our different training programs here in Israel. And we think this is a great solution in order to find solutions. So maybe you can take this idea for your countries. I think that we are finishing for today, no, Galit? What do you say?
Wow, we had 69 people, brave people that are still left. So well done.
Yeah, bravo.
Mark, thank you very, very
them.
much. I have to tell you that Mark wakes up in the morning, I think at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, and is the first one in the office. So thank you very much for your time and for being with us until almost 5 in the evening.
It's a
yes.
privilege.
So yes, Evelyn, I think we should conclude.
Okay, so let's say again, thank you very much to Mark and Yael who already left us, but thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for all for being with us, for joining us today. We have something like 70 people just now, and I think from their registration we have something like more than 60 countries here together, so really nice. Dear friends, our third meeting next week, next Wednesday, 17th of April, third and last session, so everybody invited, same time, same link, okay? In the meantime, we will put the second video on the YouTube page. I am putting you the link again in the chat. So for those who missed the first meeting, the video is already there, and for sure today, tomorrow, we will put this one. And again, Galit, thank you so much for working together here, and thanks everybody. Have a great day for the west side, good night for the east side, good evening for this area here in Israel, near Israel, Europe. Shalom, peace for everybody. We hope good news and all the best, and see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
תודה רבה.
Cheers. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.